Welcome to episode 11 of the Ego Chall Podcast. I'm Preston Byers, and I'm with Justin Binkowski. And today we're going to be talking about some pretty big news in regards to roster changes. The biggest being the benching of Huke on the Dallas Empire. We're also going to talk about Hydra, the French phenom, as I like to call him, Mr. Baguette himself. He debuted for the New York Subliners in the first week of Stage 3 of the Call of Duty League, and we're also going to talk about all the other matches that happened during the first week. So how are you doing, Bink?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing pretty well. So let's just hop
Ready to
right
get
in.
into it? Yep.
Yeah. We have 10 matches, as always, 10 matches this week to kick off the third stage of the Call of Duty League. The first was the Dallas Empire versus the Paris Legion. At this point, nobody suspected anything. Huke was in the starting lineup. Dallas just came off of a third place finish at the Stage 2 Major. They beat the Paris Legion 3-1, who were also debuting a new roster with Temp, who replaced Fire. What did you think of this series, Temp's debut, and just the overall series?
Yeah, so I mean, going into this is the first match of Stage 3, and it's the first match on that Thursday afternoon. Like you said, we're seeing Temp's debut, and Paris actually took the opening hardpoint on Garrison 250 to 111, so it was a pretty convincing win for Paris to actually kick off Stage 3, and it was, kind of like after seeing that, like, okay, Paris is, looking a little better with Temp. This might be a sign of good things to come, and then, Dallas just takes control of the rest of the series. They win Express Search 6-0. They take the control on Checkmate 3-1, and they take Checkmate Hardpoint 250 to 135. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of just like what was going through my head while I was watching was, a glimmer of hope, I guess you'll say, for Paris at the start, and then Dallas woke up. It might have been something with the vetoes. I don't remember. They were talking about the map record for Garrison Hardpoint on the broadcast, but I don't remember exactly what they said. So, not too sure about that. But if we look at the stats, kind of like what we were talking about in the previous episode with the temp change for Paris, it seems like Scraps was playing better. At least he dropped a 1.33 KD overall, went 80 and 60 throughout the 4 maps. So it looks like he's more comfortable in that flex or AR role. But then the rest of the team, Temp had the next highest KD with a 0.91. So not exactly what you were hoping to see if you're a Paris fan. But then on the side of Dallas, Krim, Huke, and Illy all had positive KDs, and Shotzi dropped a 0.82. So obviously it doesn't really mean much when you end up winning the series, but just throwing the stats out there for the sake of it, because there's one more match after this, and then we get the bombshell drop on this Thursday night.
Yeah. We mentioned this last week, but Paris, they had a really tough matchup to start this stage. Dallas had been one of the best teams in the league, and they're obviously, when you make a roster change in the middle of the season, you don't really get all that much practice. At least if you made like a roster change in, like, I don't know, I guess the middle of Stage 2, you would have maybe a month or so of practice, but they basically had 2 weeks to kind of prepare this roster at the most. So it's really tough for them. But like you said, that first map was really impressive. I was like, oh, okay, like maybe this is something. And then Dallas actually showed up. So I don't know, maybe a good sign for Paris. I don't think it's like time to hit the panic button with this roster, but I mean, Dallas at this point looked pretty good, all things considered. So let's jump up to the second and final match of Thursday. The Stage 2 major champions, the Toronto Ultra, versus the Florida Mutineers, who are also debuting a new roster. They're bringing in Havoc. They benched Slacked after the Stage 2 major. Havoc obviously played with the Mutineers all of last season. He's been on their bench all of this season. And the Ultra just kind of wiped him out. I mean, it wasn't like the biggest blowout or anything. It was just a sweep. But what did you think of Florida debuting their new roster and Toronto just kind of doing what they do?
Yeah, I think the second series that Florida played this week is a better gauge of the potential of the team. This is obviously like you were just kind of saying for Paris, is similar here for Florida. It's tough to debut a new roster against a team that just won the last major tournament. So Toronto still looked good. They picked up right where they left off. Most notably, though, like you said, it wasn't an absolute stomp. The Express S&D went 6-5 to Toronto, and Raid Control was 3-2 to Toronto. The hard point was 250 to 161, so I guess that's a little lopsided. But other than that, the other two maps are pretty close. And the thing I most wanted to point out from this map is, I'm not sure what we can credit Florida's, I guess you can say, relative success on Express S&D, because Toronto was just coming off not only that major win, but in the major grand finals, they 6-0'd Atlanta on Express S&D. So, Florida might have had some VOD to watch of Express S&D from the grand finals, and maybe won a couple of rounds off that due to some counters. But regardless, Florida won more rounds against Toronto on that map than Atlanta did, and Atlanta is considered one of the better search teams, even though they've gone through their struggles recently with the mode. So I thought that was interesting to me, but I don't really necessarily think it was a sign of Florida just being improved in search with Havoc, at least in that map. I think it was just more of a case of Big Wake going off and doing what we've seen him do a lot of times throughout this year. But that's still something I'm going to keep my eye on with Havoc in this Florida roster, is how they perform in search moving forward. And I'll have more to talk about Florida in their next matchup. But that was the main thing that I was looking at from this series. If we look at the series stats, overall, Awakening drops a 1.12 KD overall. Next highest is Skies with a 0.89. And then everybody on Toronto had a positive KD except Vance with a 0.92, which is still pretty good. Insight notably goes 70 and 42 for a 1.67. So pretty good numbers. Toronto looks like they're, picking up right where they left off. So they could be, especially with Dallas, making this recent change. And, we'll talk about Atlanta later, but it looks like right now, Toronto is the best team in the game. And I don't know if you can really argue that.
Well, let's talk about that change you were talking about with Dallas. So those two matches happened on Thursday, and late Thursday night, I believe it was like 11 o'clock or something, 11:30 or whatever Eastern time. Dallas Empire, they come out with a tweet, and they announced that Huke has been benched from their starting roster, and that they're going to replace him with Fellow. And obviously, this is really shocking, to say the least, because not only has the Empire been really good this season, they're still in second in the CDL in CDL points, but they're also the defending world champions. Huke was on that roster. This entire the roster, that was 4/5 of the championship roster, and they had just won a match maybe 6 hours before they make this change. So, I mean, what were your initial thoughts? Because you were mid GB, so like, what are you thinking when you check Twitter and you're like, holy crap, what just happened?
I was literally mind blown, and that's why I mean, like you said, I was mid GB when I saw it, and I knew it was after your shift technically ended, so that's why I texted you and you didn't even see it right away. I was like, we got to get on this. But I really we've seen some big benchings already this year. Methods obviously worked out for Toronto, and we've seen Slasher. Now we've seen Slack get benched, etc. But I mean, just the combination of Huke. He was an MVP caliber player in stage 1. And aside from his performance this year, he's been like the poster child of Envy/Empire for years now. Obviously, he was loaned to Splice at the end of Black Ops 4, but other than that, he's been playing for Envy and COD and Halo and COD again for, since 2015, something like that. So I think this was, aside from like Scump or Formal getting benched somehow, this was super surprising to me. And we can talk about the article from the Dallas Morning News, but it seems like there was some stuff going on behind the scenes, at least in terms of the team's communication, and a bunch of other stuff that I was just, when I'm first hearing the news, it doesn't really make sense, but it seems like a lot of thought went into this change, as you might expect when a player of Huke's caliber is being benched.
So Thursday night, 11:20 p.m., Empire put out this statement on Twitter. Fellow will be in the starting lineup Sunday against Toronto as we move Huke to a reserve role. The team has felt we are playing below our potential, and with Fellow playing so well in challengers, he's earned a shot to compete in the starting lineup. That was according to Rambo, who's the head coach of the Empire. He's also the general manager. But, I mean, we all know that coaches and general managers don't have the same impact that they do in traditional sports. It's not like a Bill Belichick move where Belichick can unilaterally just bench Huke and say, like, you're done. Like, that's not happening here. It's obviously a team decision. His teammates had to decide this. That's how Call of Duty esports works. In regards to roster changes, like almost 100% of the time, there have been very few instances where that's not the case. And then I believe this was Monday. So Monday afternoon, the Dallas Morning News, Sean Collins, who reports on, I believe, the Empire and the Fuel, MV's Overwatch League team. Yeah, he reported that basically he got some quotes from the team, from Rambo, from Hastro, from Fellow. Rambo's tweet, or Rambo's comment, he said, "I took a lot of crap, but I'm the coach and GM, so if anyone is going to have fingers pointed at them, it's going to be me. It's not very fun, but it is part of the role. But if it pans out the way we think it will, and it's not easy for everyone to see right now, then it will be a step in the right direction. We wouldn't have done it if we didn't think that," which obviously is the case. I don't think they would bench Huke, who, like you said, has been basically the franchise player for this organization, if they didn't think there was, potential for improvement. But I think the most, I don't know if this is the most damning or just like the biggest quote here is from Hastro, who is the chief gaming officer of MV. He's like the founder of MV. He's basically been like the head guy for this organization for so long. He said the whole reason behind this change, and I know a lot of the fans might be upset about it, is that these are professional players who have been in the scene for a long time, and they felt like they could not make progress. They felt like other teams were catching up to the team and felt like there were issues with Kyler holding back that progress. To me, that was huge, to say that one of the best players in the world, that's not even debatable, at least over the last few years, he has been one of the most talented, most sought-after players in the entire world. To say he is holding back your team's progress when you've finished second at the first major, you lost the phase in the grand finals, and then you finished third in the stage 2 major, and you had won earlier in the day. To say he's holding back progress, that was huge for me. What did you, because you sent me this article, what did you think when you read this, and what did you think of all of their explanations about why he was benched?
That's what the big thing that jumped out to me. Obviously, Kyler is Huke.
Mm-hmm.
I was just super surprised to actually see Hastro come out and say something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think, just circling back a little bit, I think Fellow's a really good player. I've been a fan of his for a while because he kind of came up from the S&D scene. He played with Fizz, and Fizz was obviously one of my favorite players to watch back in the day. So I really like Fellow, and he's always been, even on like the E United team, I think it was, he's always been like a talkative guy. And like, I guess that's just the best way to say it. So you expect that if comms are an issue, that he will be able to provide a fix for that. But I was still just super surprised that this was the change they made. And the big thing for me that I was thinking about before the article came out was just thinking about Huke as like a person. Like, he seems pretty selfless in the sense of like in game. I remember at the beginning of Modern Warfare, Shotzi was running the smoke trophy, I believe, at the start of Modern Warfare, and he was kind of playing in the hill more. And then Shotzi wasn't like putting up the numbers, and he decided that Huke was the one who was like, okay, I'm gonna switch. Shotzi can go run around the map, do whatever he's got to do. I'll run the smoking trophy and sit in hell and do the dirty work that the team needs. And that was the first thing that came to me. Like if they wanted to make this change to bring Fellow into an AR role and let Illy go to a second sub, in my head right away I was like, okay, why isn't Huke or why won't they at least try Huke as the second AR, And then after we get like a couple days develop and we hear all these other things, that's when you realize like that's not an option, because it seems like there's more stuff going on behind the scenes. At least they're bringing up Huke holding back the progress or whatever the exact quote is, and it was really surprising to me. And I don't know. I hope for the Empire's sake that the change works out, because I like a lot of the guys on this team. I think they're obviously the defending world champions, and I'm still just kind of speechless even thinking about it. But at the same time, I really want to see Huke land down his feet and get a shot. I think it would be really disappointing for just fans of competitive Call of Duty overall if like we don't see Huke play the rest of the year because he stays on Dallas's bench.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of brought up earlier where he was loaned to Splice and Black Ops 4. Maybe Dallas decides to loan him to another org for the rest of the year. I don't really know how that'll work in franchising, but I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of teams that could benefit from Huke being in the lineup, regardless of what the stuff is that we don't know happen. So just from a talent perspective, he could definitely improve plenty of teams. So I think it would be really disappointing if we don't see Huke again competing this year, but I think we will in some capacity, at least. I hope we will.
Yeah. So to, I guess, give a little more context, Fellow, he signed on as the Empire's only substitute ahead of this regular season, but I believe Clayster said on the flank this week that Fellow actually had helped out their team last year, more with like communications and search stuff, because he's friends with Clayster. He teamed with him on a United.
Yeah.
He's friends with the team in general. So it wasn't like that big of a stretch that he was brought in as a substitute. And he was, I believe it was Parasite said on the flank that people call him Motormouth because he just talks like 1,000 words a minute, basically. Like he's so fast, he talks all the time, which is, I mean, obviously great, because Rambo said in the article that their communication, or I believe it was Rambo, he said that their communication could be improved with having a Fellow there. So really it's a weird change, obviously, but Fellow has also done well in challengers. He played with Eastar in the last like 4 challengers events. They actually won the second stage of the elite, or they placed first in the regular season of the stage 2 elite, and then they got second at stage 2 playoffs. So, and then in just like the most challengers way, Fellow gets called up, and then Sib immediately goes to Eastar. So I mean, that's just how challengers works. Like everything moves around, like everything is affected by it. So it's a really weird thing. I'm also interested to see if this affects Huke, like where he goes in the off season, because I mean I would assume he's on the 1-on-1 contract, and they probably opted in for his second year of the contract. And I know he came out today and he essentially said like there's no reason to hate anybody in the Envy and like Empire org. It was more just like a team decision. But also, I mean, just the fact that he was benched, and like if they decide to re-sign Shotzi and Illy and Krim, like what does that say about him, like his future in the lineup? And I'm really curious about that specifically.
Yeah, I think just to touch on it real quick too, what you were just saying, another part of this Dallas Morning News article, I'll be paraphrasing the names, but it says, it wasn't just Rambo who made a decision. It wasn't just Krim making his veteran voice heard, and it wasn't just Shotzi and Illy tired of not reaching the top. It was all of those things. And with Fellow in the lineup, there will be hiccups, Rambo said. but Fellow also wants to fill a comms void. The head coach was actually pleased with a lot of what he saw against the Ultra, which we'll talk about later, and felt the Empire were only a couple mistakes off being up 2-1 in the series. So I think, I don't know where it is. Obviously, when you make a roster change, you expect it to improve your team. But it sounds like just from that part of the article that Dallas expected to take down Toronto, or they at least expected to have that lead after a couple maps against the team that just won the major, which I think is kind of shocking when you're considering taking out a player of Huke's caliber and just replacing him with anyone, regardless of it's Fellow. I mean, regardless of who you're replacing him with, you're making a roster change and going up against the team that just won the last tournament. Like, that's a tough match, regardless of who the team is. So that just brings me back to the point of, like, I still think there's stuff we don't know exactly about what happened with this. We probably won't ever know, but it just seems like something behind the scenes really led to this change, because like we were talking about, this came literally hours after Dallas won a match against Paris. So I think we could talk about this for a while. I don't know how many times I said it, but I'm still shocked just thinking about the idea of Huke not being in the league right now. But hopefully we see him land on his feet and get another shot. He doesn't, he's like a quiet kid. He doesn't really like. It's not like Clayster, technically he was dropped by Dallas because of the
he was very vocal about it.
Switch. But yeah, you're not like. I don't think if Huke goes to another team and plays against Dallas and he beats them, he's going to absolutely go off on Twitter and just say a bunch of stuff. That's not who Huke is, at least the Huke that we've seen so far out of him in his young career. But that would definitely be a match that I would be excited to watch if Huke gets picked up and playing against his former teammates, because you got to feel like, regardless of what happened, that he's going to definitely want to go super hard for that one.
I think it was on the flank as well, but Parasite said that Huke has an idea of like how he likes to play. Like I think Parasite's exact quote was like he's set in his ways, essentially for like that aspect of it. Like he believes he should play a certain way, and he does play a certain way according to Parasite. So maybe they were just like you can't change. Everybody else can change, but you can't. And maybe that was a determining factor. We don't really know. But before we move on, I want to pose this question to you. If say things like shake out like you think they will, like say like FaZe, Toronto, OpTic, maybe Subliners, Rocker. Those are like your top 5 or 6 teams in stage 3. Who do you think would benefit the most from Huke? Like from acquiring Huke, or like getting him on loan for the rest of the season?
I don't think it would be any of those top teams. The team that immediately jumps out to me just from a statistical standpoint is Seattle. If Huke went in and replaced Looney, just because Looney seems to be underperforming statistically, and there was also an argument there on the flank. I think Zuma was talking about like the role of IGLing and COD, and he thinks it's Fugaze. Regardless of all that, I think just purely from a statistical standpoint, Huke would be an upgrade to Looney, getting more kills on the map. That could help a team like Seattle. Other than that, from a monetary standpoint, you think, the Thieves might be a team that could afford what you assume. He has a hefty buyout. I'm not really sure who they would replace for him, but that would be something to look out for. I don't think we see Paris or London or even Florida really make a move for him. And I don't think any of those top teams you really mentioned would. So that's why it's kind of tough for me to say. I don't think OpTic's changing. I don't think Rocker's changing. I don't think FaZe is changing, obviously. So it's tough. Which, I mean, just thinking about it now, that might mean there actually could be a likelihood where we don't see Huke compete again this year, which would be real disappointing in my eyes. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, personally, I don't think we'll see him play for the rest of the season. I think that's kind of a, like, why would Empire help out any opposition
Yeah.
to like acquire or even like have a guy on loan like Huke. Like I know that's really bad, and like that is it sucks for fans because he is one of the best players and he is a really well liked player around the league. But at the same time, I don't see that happening. It just it does from a competitive standpoint. It really doesn't make any sense because like if a top six team like New York, like I could see in a universe New York making that change and saying like Mac, we'll see you later, bud. But we have the chance to like get Hook, so like we'll make this change. But as far as like from an Empire standpoint, like why would you make the move and help a team that you might have to play in the playoffs or, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them. But it's really unfortunate. But personally, I would like to see him on New York or Florida or something. It would be really cool to see like a bunch of star players together. And he obviously has a history with Clayster, and so that'd be cool.
It would be, I don't. They were talking. I mean, obviously, we'll get into New York later, but from a
Mhm.
role standpoint, that basically means you got to put Hydra back on the flex, and I don't know if that's a change they want to make. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
Florida could be interesting too. I'm trying to. I mean, Florida with Hook and Awakening, kind of the big duo. I guess they would replace Havoc with him just off the
yeah,
top. 'Cause I
probably.
feel like they're not going to bench Neptune.
I feel like it would just be like like an old OpTic situation. It's like, I mean, we just have so much talent. Like everything will work out. Like the roles and the chemistry, it'll shake out. We just need to get like 100 kills a map basically, and we'll figure it out after that. So, but yeah, I don't know if he's gonna end up playing the rest of the season. I hope he does, but we just really don't know. So it's
Yeah,
unfortunate, but that's just how COD is, I guess. So you want to move on to the next few matches?
sure.
Yeah. So after the bombshell, Friday we get two matches as well. The Los Angeles Thieves and the Seattle Surge. The Thieves pull off the reverse sweep. We were talking about Seattle last stage where they were very close to like they won a few matches. They looked good. They also were very close in winning some matches. So this is another instance of just close, but they didn't get there. What do you think of the series as a whole?
Yeah, I mean that the most notable thing to me was that it was a reverse sweep again. Just looking at these scores, it starts out on Apocalypse Hardpoint. Seattle takes it 250-223.
Hmm.
Seattle takes Moscow Search 6-4. So both these opening matches are pretty close. Los Angeles takes Raid Control 3-0, then another close Hardpoint, and they take Raid Search 6-4 to finish the reverse sweep. So I'm trying to think of any moments that really stuck out in my head from this series, and I can't really think of anything right now. If we look at the stats, though, like we were kind of just touching on with Huke, Seattle Octane drops a 1.31, going
Hmm.
97 and 74. And Looney had the lowest KD in this match with a .73, going 56 and 77. So that's kind of what I was just talking about. I mean, Hook would just be a statistical upgrade to Looney if that's a move that could actually happen. But obviously, it seems like, just based on Seattle's history so far in the COD League, it doesn't seem like they're a team that's really like making a ton of moves. So
Yeah.
regardless, we don't really have to talk about that. I think I'm just coming into this week. I wasn't 100% sure. I guess it was a little bit before that. We weren't totally sure if the Thieves were going to stick with the roster from the major, right?
Hmm.
It was just like a makeshift out there at the last minute with them bringing Draza in for Slasher, and it works out the major, and they decide to stick with it for
Yeah.
stage 3, and they're able to pull out this win. So I guess this kind of comes down to, like you were touching on with Seattle. They've had some moments in stage 2 where it looked like they might have been turning the corner, and they go up 2-0 in the series, and they're not able to close it out. So that's just going to be something we're going to have to continue to keep our eye on with Seattle. And then for the Thieves, we're going to just, I mean, maybe this roster is just meant to be. I don't really know, but
Yeah.
we're just going to have to keep seeing what they're made of and what they're able to do throughout the rest of the year.
Next matchup, OpTic versus London. London wins control, but they lose the 2 hard points in the search. Any lasting thoughts from this series? I honestly don't remember any of this series, to be honest.
I'm pretty sure it was a quick one. So it was Friday night. Oh, I do remember from they had to replay the Garrison hardpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? It was like super laggy.
Yeah, people are
That
saying
was
that they
kinda
lost
funny.
4-1.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. But yeah, like you said, I mean, London wins the control, OpTic wins the search in both hardpoints. This was London making their debut with Zaptius, most notably, coming in for Dylan. And if we look at the stats, Envoy drops a 1.18, probably one of his better series in recent memory that I can think of. And then you got Shawnee and Pollax both positive for London. Zed drops a 0.9 and Zaptius drops a 0.86. So, I mean, nobody's really going like super negative. Even Zaptius with that 0.86 is only negative 11 because he goes 65 and 76. So the numbers don't really say a lot to me here. The only thing that I was going to bring up, just because we don't really have much else to talk about from this one, is I noticed that this was, well, obviously this was our first chance to see the new control settings in play throughout this week. We saw it on Thursday, but just the start of Stage 3 in general, we're seeing the new control settings come into effect where overtime is determined by ticks instead of kills. But there was nothing on screen to indicate in the Codcaster how many ticks each team had gotten. And that was just something I wanted to point out because for a casual viewer, I mean, maybe casual viewers don't even really care who gets overtime in control, but, you know, that's something that could be improved, I think. Like, for someone like me, I was able to just count in my head, like, okay, this team captured the zone, and they got one tick on the other zone, so they had 4 ticks that round. Next round, the other team has 3. Okay, they're up 1. I was able to keep track of that. And even before, like, they didn't really have an indicator for overtime for kills. Like, they have the scoreboard up, so you can at least count the kills if you wanted to. But, like, there was nothing, like, you can't count ticks just on a scoreboard because I don't think maybe the number shows, but I don't think it does. So
I mean, I guess maybe if you look at the objectives, you could maybe figure it out. But
maybe, but it's not
exact.
super easy to it's just not like
not competitive
in your face.
Like
I'm not saying that.
I mean, it's not competitive. Like, you can't, unless you have some super memory, or like if you had a coach in your ear, like if this is like older days, like where a coach could like literally just jot down like, all right, we got like 5 ticks this round, we got 2 ticks this round, like we could do that. But in the sense of like, you know, there's no way for a player to remember, you know, so going into that 5th round, most of those players have no idea whether they're going to be on offense or defense, and that is not good, like in any sense for like competitive.
I think the players are able to remember. I'm talking just from a viewership perspective for like the casual fans out there, and even some like longtime fans. It might have been tough for them to keep track of, but I think you're right. Like some players might not be able to, you know, remember that. Like there might be guys who are just hardcore focused on slaying and they're just not even worried about it. But I think, you know, like I feel obviously playing league play is way different than playing CDL, but like I'm able to keep track of ticks in league play, like not super hard, but it's definitely not ideal. Like you said, there should be some way to just be able to easily.
It should be really. It should be like right next to the kills. I know that they changed the Codcaster during the season to show like whether a team was on offense or defense, and also they changed where the kills were in the Codcaster. So like they have made these changes during the season, and so there is hope that they would actually make this kind of change and add it. I mean, we've seen in the past like where I believe it was in Black Ops 4 where the hard point, the time wasn't like in a fixed area. You actually had to look at the point to see how much time was left on that hill, and then they eventually moved it so you could actually see it on the left side of the game. So like in this sense, I think you know, Treyarch is, you would hope that they would change this and it would be a rather easy fix, because it's not like, it shouldn't be anything game breaking, it's just literally counting. But I mean, it's probably going to be like the most annoying thing. As soon as they put it in, there's going to be a ton of glitches or something. So I mean, yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
I just wanted to bring it up as
Yeah.
something that we could hopefully see change down the road, especially since this was our first week to see the new rules in action.
Yeah. So Saturday, 3 matches. Paris, they have their second match, and LAG with Money Teen. He is debuting for the Guerrillas. LAG win 3-0. Our boy Money Teen. He replaced Vivid. Obviously, before Huke was benched, everybody was talking about Vivid. So LAG got right off the hook with Dallas and everything. So, what do you think of Money Teen and LAG?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a case where they make a change that a lot of people were questioning, and at least just in this one match we've seen them play with this lineup, it works out. Sheen just absolutely popped off in this series, really. He went 23-19, map 1, which I guess isn't absolutely popping off, but regardless, he goes 10-4 in the search, and then 39-30 in the control. Just a really solid performance out of him. And, I guess this is just a case where, apparently everyone's freaking out because LAG is benching Vivid, who a lot of people viewed as their best player, right? And the Guerrillas end up making this change that's quite controversial, and in this limited sample size so far, it's worked out. Now, Paris, obviously, they made a change too, and it'll be much easier to see how this new Guerrillas lineup stacks up to the rest of the competition as they play more matches. But so far, it looks like just from a pacing standpoint that, maybe this was the change they actually did need. And, I, for one, we were questioning it. On our last podcast, we weren't 100% sure who was going to replace Vivid, but I was saying from like a role standpoint, it didn't make sense to me to have an AR like Sheen replace
the
fast sub like Vivid. Even if, which eventually happened, Silly goes to like a sub role, I didn't think that made sense because Silly was playing well in the flex. So I guess that's a case where I'm not going to say I was wrong just because I didn't think they were actually going to bring Sheen in for Vivid. But so far, Money Sheen's a good guy. Like watching him play, and he's a good dude. So I'm happy that he got another chance in the league, and he's, obviously it's only one match, but he made the most of it so far.
Well, I want people to remember last season when OGLA, they benched Dashi and they brought in Money Chain. And I know that this is a different scenario because OGLA were like on the struggle bus, like very, very hard, because they were having a lot of like role issues, I think attitude issues, practice issues, like everything that could have went wrong for them essentially in the beginning of the year, it did. And Money Chain comes in, people are saying like, oh my god, like why would you bring in Chino for Dashi, who at that point, I mean, Dashi was coming off of like being like one of the top players in Black Ops 4 and like being just absolutely ridiculous. And like people are questioning that. And then I think the first event Chino was in, they go to the grand finals of that home series event, and they do well with him. Like they were one of the bottom teams in the league when he came in, and he helped them get to a better spot. I think they ended up finishing 9th in the regular season, and then obviously they have a pretty good run at champs without Chino and with like draws and everybody. But I think Chino, he is like the master of good vibes. I think this has been well established. You could even see it when they were showing the player cams during that LAG Paris series. Like LAG, every time that they win a search round, like you see like Chino say something, and then Silly and Assault and App are like smiling ear to ear because like he's a really good friend of Silly at least. So like I do think he brings like a communication and like just a overall team chemistry boost to any team he's on, and I think that might have helped because at least from like what I heard from like the guys on the flank, there seemed to be just like the team. The team did not want to make a change, but Vivid wanted to make the change. So they were like, well, you are the change, and we're going to swap you out for Money Chain. So I think just like bringing in someone who doesn't necessarily need to be the star of your team and just needs to be like someone to help someone to support your team. I think he's a great person to do that. I think a lot of teams could use someone like Money Chain someone that doesn't really care about their stats, but is all about making the team better and helping the team like fulfill their potential. So, I mean, I love Money Cheen. We pray to Money Cheen every night before we go to bed. So, so he's our guy. But congrats to LAG. They get their first
Real
win
quick.
of what?
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick before we move on to the next one. Just wanted to point out because of LAG's 3-0 here, we see obviously they were playing against Paris's revamped roster with Temp, but because it was a 3-0, Paris is technically on a 6-map losing streak right now with this revamped roster. I guess I can scroll down real quick to see. I think they have a pretty tough schedule. They play the Rocker and Florida this week, so going to be another tough test for Paris, but just going into that with a 6-map losing streak is all I wanted to point out. We're gonna have to keep our eyes on Paris to see how they respond.
Yeah, it could really hurt their overall standings as like from the season standpoint if they only get like 0 or 10 points this stage, and some of these bottom teams if they even get 10 or 20 points, that's a big swing for them. So we'll have to watch that. Next match, Florida versus Minnesota. Minnesota obviously had a really, really good second stage after they picked up Standy for Major Maniac, but Florida actually won this series. They rebound from their opening loss with Havoc, and they win 3-1. We got Big Wake Tings just being like the absolute, like, I think Florida was trying to come up with a new nickname because he is much bigger, much larger than just a Big Wake. So what'd you think of this match as overall?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit it on the head there. Florida, I expected Minnesota to win this just based off of what we saw from their stage 2 performance. So I was surprised. Not only did Florida win the series, but they won both hard points too. And, you know, when Minnesota made this change with Standy, they came in and they were really good at search. They weren't the best at hard point. And then they go into the major, and it looks like they fixed their hard point at the cost of some of their effectiveness in search, which obviously, you know, accuracy has that crazy 1v3 against OpTic. But aside from that, I'm not sure off the top of my head what their record was in search, but it was talked about on the broadcast that, you know, they were doing better in hard point, but doing worse in search. Now they lose both hard points, and I believe this was their first match, right? Was it the only match they played this week? I don't remember. Yeah, so they lose both hard points here, and obviously it could have been a case where just Awakening is doing Big Wake Tings and just absolutely going off. Obviously in map 2, sorry, he drops 13, Priest drops 14, and it doesn't even matter. Florida comes away with the round 11 victory there. But I wanted to talk about, just because we kind of touched on it earlier, I don't remember what the exact stuff they were talking about at the time was, but in map 4, which I believe was Garrison Hardpoint, it was Garrison Hardpoint, they did a listen-in with Florida, and it sounded like Merc and Maven, I believe, were casting, and they kind of pointed out after the listening that it kind of sounded like, you know, Havoc was taking that leadership role. And that was one of the things that, at least me, I personally was questioning with the move to replace Slacked with anybody. I was thinking of the candidates that Crone had reported on previously before they confirmed the move for Havoc. It didn't seem to me like any of the guys they were looking at might have provided that leadership. And it looks like so far Havoc is at least in some capacity filling that role, because I don't remember exactly what was said in the listen-in, but I remember him talking about like baiting for streaks for somebody, and he was like his communication sounded solid, and it seemed like he was filling that position where you just have, you know, young talent like Awakening, Skies, and Neptune just doing whatever they got to do around the map, picking up kills while Havoc's calling out and making the plays that he's got to do. So again, don't really remember exactly what was said, but it was just something that caught my attention during the series, that it looks like Havoc might be filling that leadership role that Florida needs, in my opinion, and that's something I'm definitely going to be looking for, or I guess you could say listening to, if we see more listen-ins throughout the rest of the stage while Havoc is playing for Florida.
Yeah, it makes me feel weird that Havoc is the oldest player on this lineup because Havoc is actually younger than me, and that's terrifying, actually, that I would actually be considered like a middle-aged professional Call of Duty player. You would be like ancient, like you're like Clayster, where they're actually actively trying to put you in the retirement home. But I mean, like legitimately, like Havoc is about a month younger than me, and like Big Wake and Neptune are like born in the 2000s, so it makes me actually feel really old that this team is even a thing. But yeah, like good for Havoc. I know you were very adamant about like the leadership presence that needed to be there for Florida, just because they just need direction. There's obviously a lot of talent on this team. Big Wake is literally one of the best players in the entire world. Skies last year, he was an MVP candidate. Neptune is really talented. He's young, but super talented. So they need just kind of some direction, someone to point them in the direction of like the enemies and stuff. So so good for him. A big win for them. This is not something we expected. It's a very tough win because Rocker looked really good. So let's move on to OpTic versus Seattle. Pretty straightforward series, 3-0 here. What do you think of the series as a whole? But the big question I want to throw to you is, what do you think of OpTic this season? What do you think of them? Because they've kind of underachieved at the majors, but they've consistently shown that they're very talented, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the stage where if OpTic's going to be like the team that, especially the Green Wall, but just a lot of competitive Call of Duty fans, if they're going to be that team that a lot of these people expect them to be at the very, very top, this is the stage where they got to do it right. They're starting 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, did they start 2-0 in stage 2 and they had that 0-2 week? Is that what
I think
happened?
they started
and then they
1-0 maybe.
1-0 maybe, and then regardless,
They had 2 matches that final week, so they would have had. I think they were 1-2 heading
so
into
1-0, 2-0, 1-0, 0-2, 2-0 probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Regardless of that, I think if this has got to be a statement stage for OpTic, we'll get into phase when they finally play on Sunday with the match coming up. But if OpTic can like go 5-0 in this group and just take it adamantly, and that would be like what people expect, and that would kind of solidify them as this top team that we haven't necessarily seen consistently. We've seen flashes of what this team has the potential to do, but then you have weeks like that week in stage 2, and then at the major where they had the unfortunate lineup on Moscow. Regardless, they've just they haven't been that just because of the prestige around OpTic, they haven't been that team that you expect to go out and win a championship every single tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is their time if they want to assert themselves and try to reclaim that success that they haven't seen this year in terms of just actually winning championships. This is their shot to do it, just based off of what we've seen. Obviously, they played London and Seattle, so it's not like they played necessarily the toughest teams, but they still have matches against Atlanta, the Thieves, and New York. So those will be tougher tests for them. We should be able to more efficiently gauge the current how well they're playing right now based off of those matches, but the good thing at least is if you're an OpTic fan, they didn't have that 0-2 week to start here. They went into these matches against teams that they're supposed to be, and they took care of business. That's bottom line.
Yeah, I think they've obviously gotten a lot of crap from their own fans and from opposite fans, so they're OpTic, so they're always expected to compete for championships. That's what I mean. Yeah, when I got into COD, or when I was first starting to follow COD, they weren't a championship team because Nadeshot was on the team, and that Black Ops 2 team was very good. They were usually a top 3 or 4 team, and then they fell off, obviously, because they were all playing Minecraft when they should have been practicing COD. But other than that, they were a really good team, but they weren't a championship team. And then obviously when they started winning X Games, and then they built the God Squad and AW, there was no stopping them. So now everybody expects them to win championships, and they obviously OpTic wasn't a thing last year, not real OpTic or whatever, but Chicago didn't have as impressive of a season as they probably expected, with how filthy their lineup looked on paper at the start of the season, and they made those roster changes. And then this season they look even filthier because you have Formal, you have Envoy and Dashi, along with Scump, like that team should be a championship contender, and they just haven't gotten there yet. And it's going to be really interesting to see if they don't perform up to the fans and like the analyst standards at the like the rest of the group play, but especially at the major, because if they get another top 6, people are going to be like calling for like heads to be rolling or something, because like that's just how things are, and it's going to be interesting.
That's what I mean. Like this is the most competitive we've seen professional Call of Duty, arguably ever. We have 12 teams. We cut it down from 5v5 to 4v4, so we have 48 pros, and it's just like all of the matches. I mean, there's been some lopsided matches. I mean, it's bound to happen, but it's so much more competitive and close and hard fought, and it's like, OpTic fans just expect, like you said, they expect OpTic to go out and win every single event that they play in, and it's just not feasible. Like, it's almost like they were spoiled by the OpTic dynasty in a sense, where even though they didn't win every single event they played in, it felt like it for a good stretch of time. They were dominating. So people still expect that, and I think that's just until like there's always going to be those hardcore fans. Even myself, like with the Yankees, I expect the Yankees to win the World Series every year.
Yeah, that's obviously not going to happen though.
Okay, but it's just it comes down to like you got to realize there's a lot of good teams right now, and it's not going to be OpTic's not going to. I guess they could, but I would be very surprised if OpTic just goes through a major not dropping a single map, or any team for that matter.
Yeah.
So I just think, looking at it, like it was a good week for OpTic. We'll have to see how they stack up against the other teams in their group, but fans just gotta like take a step back, and even if there's struggles or whatever happens down the road, I don't even know where I'm trying to go with this. I just think it's like they just temper your expectations, and maybe good things will come. We did see Chicago, even though it wasn't OpTic, they won 2 home series last year. They won the London one, and then the first one with Pristini, I think. So it's not like they didn't win last year. And right now it looks like Toronto's the best team in the game, so it could be tough for OpTic to kind of take the stage 3 major, but with the current form of FaZe, just in the sense as they're not as dominant right now as they looked earlier in the year. This might be their chance if OpTic is trying to come out and get a major title. If they're able to keep powering through this stage and play well, it could be their shot.
The last point I'll make before we move on to the final 3 matches, I just don't know how OpTic could realistically improve this roster.
Because, they're not going to make a move.
Like, even if you acquired Huke, like, who do you replace him with? Does it actually make you the top team in the league? Because, like, on paper, this team should be really good. Like, they obviously are really good. I don't want to bring them down or anything, or like try to underestimate them or anything. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying, like, on paper, they should be in the grand finals of most events, and they just haven't. And I think that's more, like, I think the 1v3 thing, that's a really unfortunate, but that's also a fluke. Like, most times that's not going to happen. That's bad communication, but that's one instance of really bad communication that leads to you getting eliminated from a tournament. Like, in all likelihood, or like, they should have won that map. They should have won that series overall. So, like, that's unfortunate, but it happens. And in the Subliners series, in the Stage 1 major, Subliners just, like, they had such a big brain, and their vetoes were incredible. Like, OpTic obviously wasn't prepared for that, and I don't think that they'll be unprepared again for something like that. So, overall, I don't think it's, like, the worst thing in the world. This team's obviously really good. I think they're a championship contender, although they haven't gotten, like, a top 3 or something at a major yet. But it can happen. But I just wanted to bring that up because they've obviously started 2-0, but they have a really tough stretch to finish, and it'll be interesting to see how they stack up against the 3 top 6 teams, which is just ridiculous. Yes.
I don't think we see a change. I think it would be very shocking if we saw any type of change from OpTic. I think this is the roster we're going to see. I mean, as long as Kaz stays 4v4, And as long as Formal and Scump aren't retiring, I think we see this roster for, the foreseeable future on OpTic.
Sunday, we had 3 matches. LA Thieves versus London, Atlanta FaZe versus New York Subliners, and the Toronto Ultra versus the new look Dallas Empire. So let's start with Thieves versus Ravens. Thieves win 3-1. Any thoughts on this match?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about this one too long. Obviously we see Zaptius coming in, so this is a second match with London. But this is a repeat from that Stage 2 Major down in the lower bracket where London went up early and Thieves pull off the reverse sweep to keep their lower bracket run alive. So in this match in Stage 3 group play, we see London win map 1, and kind of in the back of my head, it's like, oh, are we going to see an exact repeat?
Yeah.
What we saw last time, but that's not the case. Los Angeles just takes the next 3 maps for the 3-1 win. Pretty convincingly. I don't really have too many thoughts about the series.
That's fine. I mean, I was just gonna
say Kenny went 95 and 57 for a 1.67 KD.
So do you think this is like the experiment has worked or something? Because like there was the conversation, and Jacob obviously compared it to basketball, but do you think from what you've seen, like Kenny can be the main RR for this team? Do you think this roster is going to stick?
Right now, I think it is, barring some change it would have to be another unexpected change. I don't think Slasher comes back in the lineup. It seems like they're pretty set on Kenny being the main AR. And to that, he's putting up the numbers, but I still want to see him go up against some of these like top caliber main ARs. So who did the Thieves play earlier? They played the Surge. So he's playing Octane in that series, but Octane still had a pretty good series, and I think Kenny had a decent series too statistically. But I still will be interested to get a bigger sample size of Kenny on the main AR. But he's a super talented player, so I'm not surprised to see him succeed. That's just changing a gun. I don't think it's a massive change. Obviously, from a role standpoint, it's kind of crazy. You just think about Kenny, the submachine gun superstar, going to main AR, but it's working. So I don't really know what to say about it. They're 2-0 right now in Stage 3, so just gonna have to keep on seeing what the Steve's lineup is capable of.
The comp should really try to keep the PPSH out of his hands, because he's probably going to end up being the MVP if they give it to him.
It's not that good in this game.
Just buff it. Just give it to Kenny. I want to see like his. I think it was like a 15-0 run on London Docks. I want to see it on Raid or maybe Standoff if we can get it for champs or something. So let's do it, Treyarch, if you're listening. Come on, what are you waiting for? So let's go to the next match. Big upset. Yes. New York. They upset the Atlanta FaZe. This is really crazy, but it's even crazier considering this is New York's first match with Hydra in the lineup. He replaces Diamond Con. There were a lot of rumors about what New York would do for their roster for Stage 3. There were rumors that they were trying to acquire Sib from Atlanta FaZe. He's the sole substitute for that team, and that they were going to try to replace both Mac and Diamond Con on their roster and replace them with Hydra and Sib. They only go with Hydra for this, and that's really all they needed, apparently. They win 3-2. What did you think of this pretty big upset?
Yeah, I was super excited. We finally got to see Hydra's debut, and he delivered. He ends up dropping a 1.09 KD overall. He went 85 and 78. And most notably, he didn't have huge pop-off games in the searches. Let me look real quick. I think he went 3 and 7. Yeah, he went 3 and 7 in Map 2 search, and then he went 5 and 6 in Game 5. But he went positive in all the respawns. So he got 31 kills in Map 1, and then he went 24-23 in the control, and 22 and 18 in Map 4. So he could just be one of those sub guys who's a good respawn player, which nothing wrong with that. But it was a good debut for him. Obviously, we were talking about it before. Not a lot of people probably expected them being New York, to take down Atlanta, even though Atlanta had just lost in the grand finals. But they were able to do it. And to me, I was pretty surprised that New York was able to win both hard points. Atlanta had over 200 points in both, and it was 250 to 241 in map 4. So that was kind of surprising. But Atlanta, this was Atlanta's first match after they signed Tupac as their S&D analyst. They win Express 6-3, which I believe the last time Atlanta played New York, New York won Express Search. So that was interesting to me. And I was thinking in Game 5 that it was going to be a sign of Atlanta improving in Search and going 2-0 in the searches, because they had a 3-0 lead and a 5-3 lead in Game 5, and New York was still able to come back and take the round 11 win. So there was a scenario in that round 11 where I believe it was Celium threw a flash or a stun out of Zig on raid, and like ASIM was right there and it didn't hit him, and that allowed like New York to push in. Like Atlanta wasn't looking at Zig because they thought they had just cleared it, and New York pushed in. So that was kind of just like an unlucky scenario, but not taking anything away from New York. They were able to get a big win here, but I thought that was just worth mentioning because ASIM tweeted the clip, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that stun didn't hit him. But regardless, I thought, New York looked good with Hydra. Hydra performed well in his debut, especially against a super talented team like FaZe. And unfortunately, we only saw both of these teams play one match this week, so don't really have much to say about either team beyond that. It'll be interesting to see how New York continues to play this week with Hydra in the lineup, as well as to see how Atlanta respond to now being 0-1 in stage 3. So they're going to have to bounce back, and all eyes will be on that. We saw earlier this year, Simp tweeted after they lost to the Guerrillas how mad he was, and something similar might happen this week if Atlanta's ticked off and firing on all cylinders. It could result in more finishing moves or exciting gameplay.
What stood out to me was just like how many kills were in that Garrison hardpoint there. So I looked at it. It was really close. Obviously, it was a 39-point game. And the subliners, they outslayed New York, or they outslayed FaZe 111 to 95. Like, obviously, Clayster and Hydra both dropped 30-plus kills, and only Simp, who drops 35 kills. Like, this man is, like, he does it all. And, like, it's ridiculous. He helps my fantasy team so much. But, like, they, like, Celium, 17 and 28, BZ 23 and 33, RC's 20 and 27, Simp 35 kills, and they come within 39 points of beating New York on this map. And then you go to Apocalypse, where it's a 9-point game, and there's, like, basically, I don't know, like, 2/3 of the kills, like the total kills. Like, New York gets 85 kills total, and FaZe gets 87 kills. Like, just the difference between Garrison and Apocalypse, like the engagements, like they're off the charts basically, because like it's just ridiculous, to be honest. Like how action packed something like Garrison is, and then you go to Apocalypse and there's barely any engagements, like relatively. So that stood out to me, and just the fact that Simp was just absolutely ridiculous in a loss. Like that just, I mean, I would say he's the MVP frontrunner right now, and I mean this series kind of proves it, that without them they probably get, or without him like actually having a good series, they probably get swept. In my opinion, like if he goes like just like a 1 KD or something, or he has a negative KD, they get swept here. So he almost pulls it off, which is ridiculous. But I'll stop talking about Simp because we actually have one more game to talk about, and it was the most intriguing game, the most intriguing match of the weekend because of Huke getting benched, the Dallas Empire versus the Toronto Ultra, which we also saw at the Stage 2 Major. We see this again to close out week 1 of Stage 3, and the Ultra sweep Dallas. And Fellow, he doesn't have a great statistical series, but I think this was just personally, I think it's unfair to really judge this team based off of the series. But what do you think of Fellow overall and in this series?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier, like just in the sense of from that Dallas Morning News article, it sounded like Rambo thinks they made some mistakes and that cost them. I believe the quote was that he thought they could have had a 2-1 lead out of these 3 maps they lost. Obviously, all the maps are close. So it was Check Me Hardpoint 250, 242. Miami Search was 6-3, and the Rave Control was 3-2. So, I mean, it was a close series. And obviously, Rainbow thinks it could have gone another way. At least these initial maps could have. But yeah, you look at the stats, and all 4 players on Toronto have over 1 KD. All 4 players on Dallas have below a 1 KD. So, not much to really say from a statistical standpoint. I think this is a case where we see another team make a change, regardless of how controversial or whatever the change may be. It's just a team making a change going up against the team that looks really strong and just won the last tournament. So it's a tough match. I believe the Empire play 2 matches this upcoming week. I don't know for sure. Nope, it looks like they only play 1.
Okay.
So we got 2 more weeks now, even if we only see them play 1 match this week. The following week we'll see them play 2. So after those 3 matches, we should have a better gauge of how this new Dallas lineup with Fellow and without Huke will perform.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think this is a tough one to judge it on based on who Dallas was playing against.
Yeah, if you were to compare it to like traditional sports, it's basically like making a quarterback change against like the Buccaneers or something. Like just ridiculous. Like it's not fair, but that's just how it is. And you don't expect really anything. Like a win would have been the most shocking result for Dallas. Like them winning a map or 2, that would have been impressive. But them beating Toronto, who just won the major and who won their first match of the week, like it would have been like, okay, maybe this was a good decision. Like everybody
would have shut a lot of people up.
Yeah, everybody would have backtracked, and obviously because they got swept, people were talking trash and saying like, "Where's Huke? Where's Huke?" But
I mean, that's just kind of
but that's just it's unfair, and obviously we'll see what they have. Like you said, they only have 1 match this week, so they can focus more on practice and improving with this team before they have a 2-match week. So let's talk about the matches. We have 10 again. The second week of Stage 3, starting on Thursday, April 29th, London versus New York, and the Los Angeles Thieves versus the Atlanta FaZe. Who do you got in London versus New York? Let's just go, like, we're kind of running over, and I'm literally, like, dehydrated because I'm sweating.
Yeah, we can go rapid fire here.
So, like, London versus New York and LA Thieves versus Atlanta. Who do you got?
I'm going New York and Atlanta. I think the first series should be, just based off of us seeing New York take down FaZe. New York should be heavy favorites going in against another revamped version of London that didn't look necessarily the strongest. But I think the Thieves-Atlanta matchup could be interesting. Mm-hmm. I think Atlanta should win it. But, I don't really know what to think about the Thieves revamped roster now. And I guess I wouldn't be totally shocked if they somehow pulled it off, but I still think I'm going with FaZe.
Yeah, I agree with you on both. I don't think London, obviously, they had their new roster last week. It didn't turn out well. That's really just like that happens. Like there's nothing to really worry about from that standpoint. But I think New York is the better team no matter what, and I also think Atlanta is a better team than LA Thieves. I don't believe in the Thieves with this roster as like a long-term solution, and I think FaZe are probably the best or second best team in the entire league. So nothing to see there. Friday, April 30th, LAG versus Toronto and Paris versus the Minnesota Rocker. Who do you have in these 2 series?
Wouldn't it be something if Money Chain just came out and handed Toronto their first loss since the Stage 2 major? I'm not going to go with it, though. I think you might because you've been on the Guerrillas train before. But I'm going to go with Toronto and then Minnesota. I just think there's a case where, again, we have 2 favorites who should take down the other teams. But, maybe the Guerrillas put up a fight with this new roster. Who knows? And I just think, we're seeing Paris, like I mentioned earlier, they're 1-6 map count with the new roster. And even though Minnesota lost to Florida, I expect Minnesota to be the better team in that series.
I will go with LAG because my team is my boy, and LAG is my team. As much as they don't want to be my team, they are my team. I'm thinking about ordering some LAG gear just so when we do this little shtick for the podcast, I can always put on my LAG gear. But I think they also are not like they're not a great matchup for Toronto. I think LAG can take that search, and maybe if Toronto just loses their hard point, their first hard point like they were in the major, that could be a 2-0 series lead. And even if they do end up getting reverse swept, they have 3 chances to finish out a series there. So I'll go with LAG there. And then for Paris and Minnesota, I'm sorry, Mike. Paris is not winning champs at this event, but they will win champs. But they're just not going to beat Minnesota. They're just, I mean, why would I pick Paris right now? They just kind of need to prove that this roster can work and is in the right direction, and I just haven't seen that yet. And Minnesota is still good, in my opinion. So let's go to Saturday matches. London versus Atlanta, LAG versus Dallas, and Seattle versus New York. Let's start at the top. London versus Atlanta. Who do you have?
Going Atlanta, I think. Regardless of what you think about, not you, regardless of what anybody thinks about Atlanta's recent, I'm going to say struggles. They've lost a grand finals and a match against Hydra-led New York. Regardless of what you think about that, they should be able to take care of business against London. No questions asked. I would be super surprised if I think it would be a bigger upset than when the Guerrillas upset Atlanta if London somehow took down Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna go with Atlanta too. If that's like if no one knew that, like, just don't leave the stream because we love you, but you're not all right. LAG versus Dallas. Obviously they'd be coming in 1-0 into this series. So like, what do you? Dallas versus LAG. Who do you have?
I think this one could be interesting, depending on how the Guerrillas play.
If they smoke Toronto, you're gonna be like, "Hey, Mike, can I change my pick'em answer for this match?"
No, I would never do that. But I mean, it could be interesting just because we're still. This is going to be the second match we see with Fellow in the Dallas camp, and who knows if the Guerrillas are riding high off a good match against Toronto, whether they win or lose. The Guerrillas might be able to pull something off here. I'm going to pick Dallas. Just expecting them to be able to take care of business in a match here, but I guess I totally wouldn't. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Guerrillas somehow pulled it off, just considering the circumstances surrounding Dallas with a new roster too.
Yeah, I have 3 letters for you. LAG. I mean, if this was best of 9, I think that they would beat them 5-0, and then Cheen would be like, "Let me go back in. Let's win 4 more maps just to make it a big deal." So I'll say LAG. I mean,
you kind of had to pick them because you picked LAG to beat Toronto.
Well, I think they're going to win the Stage 3 majors, so there's really no reason not to.
Shit.
They're going to run the table. They're going to pull off a phase.
We're not doing this again.
5-0 in group play. What it'll be 3-0 in the Stage 3 major. They have this. This is like, it's basically a done deal. LAG, I'll say 3-0 over Dallas. And then, yeah. So Dallas will probably just explode at that point as soon as Money Chain just absolutely demolishes them. Seattle versus New York. Seattle, we obviously saw they had a really close match. They got reverse swept in New York. This will actually be their second match of the week, their third match of the stage. They'll play London on Thursday. So the Surge versus Subliners.
I'm going Subliners. I don't think I would be surprised. I mean, we have seen the Surge show up in some cases, but just based off of recent performance with New York looking good with Hydra in a limited sample size against a strong team like FaZe, and Surge losing last week, I'm going to go with New York.
Yeah, I'll go with the Subliners as well. Hydra looked good. The team as a whole looked good. I know this was a pretty close series, I think, in Stage 2 group play. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was a 3-2 or a 3-1 or something. I mean, I might be wrong on that, but I don't
remember.
I thought I remembered this being a close series. But I mean, I honestly think Seattle can win this. Like, it's not a foregone conclusion like in some of these other series that like Subliners will win or anything. But I think New York will come out on top. Seattle just doesn't seem to be. They don't seem to have it to pull off an upset like this.
Just to burst your bubble, Seattle did not play New York in Stage 2 group play.
Yep, not sure who I was thinking of then, because it was definitely Seattle, but I don't know who they actually played
So
then.
Seattle, just real quick, I can rapid fire. Seattle beat Florida 3-1.
Not that one.
Then they lost to Dallas 3-2.
That was probably it.
Why is it taking so long? They beat Paris 3-0. They lost to OpTic 3-0, and then they lost to the Rocker 3-2.
I think it was the Dallas one that I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
that was the one that came down around 11, but we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, so I'll go with New York, and then we got final three
Yeah.
matches: Paris versus Florida, Minnesota versus Toronto, and I don't know what they call this. Like, I don't know. Like, we have the E Clasico for Empire versus OpTic, and this is kind of like, I don't know, like the HBR Classic or something. LAT versus OpTic. So let's start at the top: Paris versus Florida.
I actually want to start calling it that. That takes me money.
Legion versus Mutineers. Who do you have?
Gotta go Florida. I mean, just based off of what we've seen so far from the Paris lineup and Florida pulling off the win over Minnesota last week, I expect Florida to take this one.
Did we mention that Big Wake got fiber?
Oh, we did not. We brought it up last week that he was getting it. Now he actually has it.
He done got it, and Paris is about to get their ass whooped because Big Wake is coming out with like 2 ping. He's literally going to like reach through his computer screen and slap Aqua. It's honestly going to be unreal. So yeah, Florida, if they could win like 3-3, they would. I think this is gonna be a stomp because Big Wake is gonna whatever the nickname was that they're trying to give him now. Walloping Wake was my favorite. So he's probably gonna go off in this series. Next matchup is the Battle of the North, I think is what they call it. Minnesota versus Toronto. I mean, obviously Toronto would be coming off their loss to LAG. So Rocker versus Ultra.
This took a turn real fast.
This is what happens when I'm sweating the entire podcast. I'm dehydrated. I think I'm hallucinating. So somebody should actually call a doctor.
Oh, I shouldn't be laughing at that, but I'm going to go with Toronto here. Again, expectations. I am not thinking that Guerrillas take down Toronto, so I don't think they're going to be 0-1 coming into this. Whereas Minnesota would be playing Paris, so in theory, both teams would be coming off wins coming into this, but still just, Toronto's at stage 2 major until I have a reason to pick against Toronto right now. I'm going to ride with them, so I go Toronto here.
Yeah, I think Toronto will be pissed off after getting 3-0'd by Money Chain, so, I mean, there's no reason to think that Minnesota should even have a shot in this. No, I think this will be a good series. The two very good teams, and I mean, there is like kind of a rivalry aspect, at least between the organizations. I know the players don't really buy into that, but like from the organizational standpoint, this is like a big deal. We'll see this on social media and stuff. So,
one thing I'm going to be excited to see is just the Standy versus Kleenex battle.
Mm-hmm.
They're both aggressive sub players, so we should see a lot of good duels out of them in this match, regardless of who wins.
Yep. And then the last match, LAT versus OpTic Chicago. Have they played in the regular season?
It's a good question.
I know they played in the preseason, the kickoff classic, but I can't remember if they played so far this season. I'll look it up while you're talking. But like, what are you thinking, LAT or OpTic here?
I'm gonna go with OpTic just because we've talked about it enough. I just think kind of what we said earlier. This is OpTic's time if they want to cement themselves as a really top caliber team.
Mm-hmm.
This would be their chance to do so. Is this their only match this week? The Thieves play FaZe and OpTic, and I believe this is OpTic's only match.
Yeah, it is. They played at Stage 1 Major. LA Thieves lost 3-1.
Got it. I felt like they did play besides the preseason classic, but I wasn't 100% sure. Regardless, I just think OpTic should be able to take care of business here in the HBR Classic, as coined by Preston. I don't really have much else. As long as OpTic's firing all cylinders and they're able to come out and get the job done, I think they're taking this one.
Yeah, I think OpTic will win. I want LAT to win just because I think OpTic already won one time this season against LAT. I think they beat LAT in the preseason as well. So like
Yeah.
the bragging rights is firmly in the OpTic camp, and it's fun when these teams are able to like meme each other. So like LAT winning this would be a really big win for this like team as a whole, because obviously OpTic's really good, but it would also make the later stages of the group play more interesting if OpTic has to fight to get into like the first or second seed like they did last stage. So from a personal standpoint, I would love to see LAT pull this off. But it's a great match to end the week on. If anybody's watching and they want to ask some questions or bring up something we can talk about, we'll stick around for a little bit, answer some questions in the chat. So yeah.
Do you have your trivia question you wanted to put on screen?
Oh yeah. Let me bring that up real quick. Class, pull out your number 2 pencils and your erasers. It's time to do a little quiz. I don't even know how I could bring this. I opened a link somewhere.
I got it. Prof.
There you go. So let me zoom in on this. I think you can see it. So class,
you're gonna have to explain real quick.
Oh yeah, so
brief.
Today,
Very brief.
I don't like the Esports Commission, or I don't even know what this organization.
Certification.
Yeah. So basically, this organization, they created a esports certification exam. It's a $400 exam to basically get a certification that you're like an esports like professional and that you should get hired for these jobs. It's been heavily memed on Twitter. People just absolutely hate this idea. The sample questions have been not incredible from my point of view, but there was a good question that a young boy presented to me. He actually walked down the street. He was like, "Hey, PSOG, I have a question from this exam. Can you help me?" And I was like, "Sure, Johnny, I'll help you." He asked me, there exists a Call of Duty esports podcast with 2 dashing co-hosts. It's called the Ego Chall Podcast, obviously. And from your recollection, what has Justin Binkowski, aka Bink, recommend you always remember to do? This is a multiple choice question. A is get your gunny up. B is to always ego chow. C is to send the chow. And D is chalk it and rotate. Class, what is the answer?
Oh no.
I don't have the chat pulled up, so my teacher's assistant, Justin Binkowski, he will be monitoring the chat to make sure that you guys all get this correct, because this will be on the exam.
Trem is saying the correct answer is E, dodge, but he's saying it's not there.
No, that's just Tremor and GBs. That's not the actual answer.
Yeah, that's definitely not the right answer. This isn't a question about, Jim dodging chug chows or anything else.
Or dodging friendship. This is not it.
Is Tremor only active participant? I guess I'm gonna have to post the answer in chat.
You're also gonna have to tell me when you post the answer, because I'm not looking at chat.
There it is. Tremor said, "Is it C?" And Tremor is correct.
Yes.
Our Ego Chall
correspondent.
Expert. What did we call it? Correspondent. Yeah. Our head correspondent, Justin Tremor Limoges.
Our Chow correspondent, our Vermont correspondent, the Goach. It is C, send the Chow. You should always remember to send the Chow. Don't be stupid. Just send it. So thank you, class, for your participation in this quiz. It was very, very enlightening. I hope that you guys can become. I believe I posted on the Ego Chall Twitter that you can actually become an Ego Chall Pal. You're certified as an Ego Chall Pal now. Good job, Tremor. I'm really proud of you. Where is this? Oh, God. And so, undefeated in Ego Chall quizzes. That is correct. I mean, I guess we'll just ignore your first answer. It was you erased it off your sheet, so we didn't grade it.
Maybe we can post the question on Twitter, so some of our friends / fans who aren't watching the live version late at night are able to provide their answers.
Yep. We will. Yeah. So make sure to send the chow. Just remember that.
Yeah, are you
Yeah.
stealing my thunder?
We're just gonna say it a lot. Like every segment, we're just gonna say, "Oh, remember to send the chow." Tremor, if you or anybody else has any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. We'll stick around for like maybe 5 or 10 more minutes and
All right.
answer them, and then dip out. I think I think a bucket is under me, just collecting all the sweat that's been dripping off of me for the last hour and a half or so.
Yeah, I think we're good to just wrap it up.
Yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or follow the podcast on Spotify. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. This podcast is also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Make sure to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us. It actually gets more people. This podcast will get more recommends to people, so that would be really cool if we can get more listeners on everything. So yeah, we'll be back next Tuesday. So that's what, like May 3rd, I think. I'll actually be done with school, so I won't
May
be
4th.
I will technically won't be a college graduate, but I will be preparing to be a college graduate by the next time you guys are here. So yeah, make sure to listen to the podcast and share it with your friends. So that's it from me. Take it away, Bink.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And as always, remember to send the chow.